Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Building Apps with ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript Charts components. Hi, I'm Ganesh and my colleague Jimmy. We would be sharing how you can start using charts components to build chart-based mapping applications. We just released the charts components packages in 4.29 version of Maps SDK for JavaScript last week. You saw a preview of them in the plenary. Today, we are excited to share more about charts components. Yeah, before we go into sharing how you can build charting application using the newly released charts components package, we want to share a quick history of our motivation or purpose on this project. The purpose of charts component was to provide a platform level common language and solution for charting. We did have different chart implementation in various ArcGIS products. When this project started, the primary goal and purpose was, can we have a common specification, a language like WebMap for describing charts in the ArcGIS system? And can we be able to build a common implementation that can be shared and reused? With these questions, we started how we can deliver on this purpose. The how, the process. We embrace web standards, collaboration across teams, and modern technologies with a strength-driven cross-functional team. The result of this effort is that today we offer charts components that are framework agnostic solution using a common chart specification to both for our internal usage and for developers like you today to build chart-based mapping application. When used alongside maps, charts can provide a complete data visualization story of your data. Charts components have been integrated in different applications in online. Some of them are listed here. You can author, view, edit charts in Map Viewer on supported layers. Charts components are integrated in dashboards, Experience Builder, Instant Apps has a Charts Viewer application. Recently, charts components were integrated in ArcGIS Hub as well. Now you can use the same charting components in your custom application development. Here are some custom application examples that can be built using chart components. We'll be showing you how you can build one such application today. But why do you want to use charts components? What are its benefits? Chart components are used in many online and enterprise applications, as you saw earlier, so you're leveraging the same solution we are using in our own products. It follows a common charting specification, so it allows charts to be defined similar to a web map specification supported in ArcGIS products. It allows you to continue building custom applications from charts created on a layer or a web map from ArcGIS Pro or online map viewer. Having the chart travel back and forth from one ArcGIS product to your own custom application is a powerful and useful scenario. You will see it in later in the demo part of the session how it can be done. We have optimized charts to perform well on ArcGIS feature layers, both hosted and non-hosted. We continue working with our feature services team to improve charts performance. And it is built using the web component standard, so it's reusable and framework agnostic, that you can use it in any type of framework or application architecture that you are using. We would like to give a quick intro and recap of the SDK component story. There was a session yesterday called Getting Started with ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript components. This will help you anyone who have missed that session. Maps SDK for JavaScript components provides pre-built UI that can be used by beginner or advanced users to build geospatial applications with minimal code. Currently, it comprises of the map components, which includes the map component, the scene component, many components with functionality equivalent to existing widgets in the JavaScript Maps SDK. Coding components package will eventually contain a wide range of tools, code editors that support coding. Currently, it has the arcade editor component, which allows the end user to create arcade expression. The newly released charts components that we are talking about today contains a series of components that can be used to build charts in your application. Like I said, we use web components. What are web components? It's not just a single technology. It comprises of at least 3 web technology or standards supported in all major browsers. The first is the custom elements. As you can see there, Custom elements provides a set of JavaScript APIs to define custom element and their behavior, and then they can be used to describe your user interface. For example, here, ArcGIS Charts bar chart is a custom element. When defined and registered on the browser, it will render a bar chart on the supported layer. And the second technology is Shadow DOM. It's a set of JavaScript APIs that helps you to provide an encapsulated behavior of your component. And the Shadow DOM renders separately from the main document tree. So if you inspect the ArcGIS chart bar chart on a browser, you will see that we are leveraging the Shadow DOM, which allows us to encapsulate our implementation and styling. The third technology is HTML templates, which comprises of the template tag and the slot elements. We don't use that much the template tag, but we do leverage the slot element. You can think of a slot as a placeholder inside a web component that you can fill with your own markup. So for example, in ArcGIS chart bar chart, there is a slot called action bar, which you can fill it up with an ArcGIS chart action bar to provide interactive charting capabilities, which you will see in our demo how it can be done. So these three technologies comprises the web components. So with this introduction, I would hand it over to my colleague Jimmy, who will be showing you how you can get started to build application using charts components, covering how you can install them, where to find the documentation, how to use it in different frameworks. We'll show you a custom mapping application built using charts components today.
Thanks, Ganesh. So yeah, let's talk about how we can get started with charts components. Similar to all the other component types that we offer in the map SDK, map components and coding components, you can get started with charts components by navigating to the ArcGIS developer website. We have included all the necessary documentation there and samples, tutorials, and for you to get started on your project. You can install charts components as an NPM package or simply include it as a script tag for more basic applications. With charts components, there are a variety of chart types that you can actually use. So on the screen, you can see this is the current list that we currently support, and each one will allow you to visualize your data in a completely different way. For example, I won't go into detail for every single one of them, but let's talk about the newest chart type, box plot. So with box plot, you can visualize and compare the distribution and the central tendency of numeric values through their quantiles. We also offer major framework support. On the screen, you can see the basis on how to get started with React and Angular. For React and Angular, we offer an additional React Angular friendly package. The React version of the component package is the recommended way to use web components in the React application. The benefit of using this package is the custom events emitted by the component will work with React's synthetic event systems. And I don't know if you can see, but instead of the traditional kebab cases for a component, React have to use Pascal cases. Later on during the session, I will be showing a quick demo on how to build a React application with charts components. And we also offer support for other major frameworks and build tools such as Vue, Vite, Webpack, and all these will be found as samples and templates on our documentation site. So there's usually two ways that you can display a chart in your custom application. The first is reading a pre-configured chart that you have created on a feature layer or web map. So with pre-configured chart, they're supported on feature layers and all the subtypes. You can configure a chart, let's say a map viewer, and have it save on the layer in the web map, and you can use charts components to bring it into your own custom application. The second way is creating a new chart. I understand this is a pretty crucial workflow for a lot of custom applications. So you can create charts and save it back onto the feature layer and have it update in map viewer, for example. And I will be showing all this during the demo as well. To create a new chart, we actually have a separate helper package called charts model. So with charts model, you can do all the configuration in your code editor with minimum amount of code. And just like charts components, charts model is available on NPM as a package or through CDN. You can include it simply in a script tag as well. So now I'll be going into the demo, but before I actually go into the React demo, I want to show you step by step on how you can get started from reading the documentation to downloading the samples to maybe walking through the tutorials, because I understand this is new to a lot of folks in the room. So once you navigate to the developers.arcgis.com, you can click on the documentation tab on the top. And you can go down to the web section for ArcGIS Map SDK for JavaScript. Components is currently in beta, so we have a little tab on the left-hand side. So when you expand that, this is where all the necessary documentation for you to get started is located on the developer site. So here we have some description for the 3 types of components that we currently offer: map, charts, and coding. And you can read through all the documentation for getting started, learn the difference between AMD and CDN. You can learn how to use it in a React package, a React application versus an Angular. We also offer some helpful tips on programming patterns. But the one place that I do want to redirect you to is this component API. So once you click on the component API, this will bring you to our external documentation that lists all the components that's available to you. As you can see, we have map, charts, and coding components. For each of these, we have a welcome page, a get started page, and some more documentation below. So under the component reference, as you can see here on the left-hand side, these are all the components that's available to you in the charts components package. I showed on the screen earlier today that there's all these types of different charts that you can bring into your application, but there's also different configurations. Depending on the value that you pass through parameters, you can generate a chart that looks and feels completely different. It will also help you to visualize the data in a very brand new way. Under the Get Started page, here we have included links for all the templates. So for example, if you are a new developer that has never used React before, we have set up a React template. So once you click on this, this will bring you into our public GitHub repo that contains all the templates. Right now, I'm in the React sample, and all you need to do is just click this, and then it will download as a package, and then you can unzip it, put in your favorite code editor, and you can get started there. The next thing I want to talk about are the tutorials. So we also have a number of tutorials here for the components. We have 3 for the map components, and we also have 2 for the charts components. So these components have different level of difficulties, but for you to get started, I would recommend to navigate into the display a chart component. This is a very simple vanilla JavaScript application. There's no frameworks involved. On this page, you will find a step-by-step tutorial on how to get started, to bring your first chart. You can replace the portal item ID with your own web map ID and replace it with your own feature layer as well. When you click on the View in Code pane, this will bring you into the view where you can play around with the code, kind of understand how it works. And I'll briefly go through what's going on here. There's no major JS that's being configured here. Everything can be included in the script tab because it's such a simple application. But under the body, as you can see here on line 25, we have an ArcGIS Charts scatter plot element. And this is all you need to put a placeholder on your web application. And then all the logic for loading in the charts can be done in the script tag. So on line 27 to 38, the section that I have highlighted, this is basically just saying we need to bring a feature layer item. As you can see, I have passed the portal item ID. And once this is called, we're going to be using this inside the event listener for bringing the chart. Within this event listener on the chart, as you can see, I have selected a query selector on the ArcGIS scatter plot. And within this, I have loaded the layer, which is from the load feature layer item function above. I also can grab the configuration from that layer. So a chart can possibly be configured in Map Viewer and have it saved on that feature layer. So all you need to do is call the .charts. And if you have multiple of them, you just refer to it by setting the correct index numbers. So I only have one chart, so it's at index 0. The next thing is grab that scatter plot element from the HTML, code earlier on line 25. And the very last thing is you need to set the configuration for the scatterplot element to the configuration we loaded in, and the layer to the layer we loaded in. And as you can see here, the actual code for displaying the chart is just about 5 lines, and you have a fully interactive chart that you can visualize your data with. We also offer another tutorial that is a little bit more advanced and show you how we can sync up some selections between charts components and map components. In Map Viewer, when you make a selection on the chart, the same features that those selections made on the chart will get highlighted and selected on the map as well, and you can do the same thing in your custom application. I'll be showing this a little bit later in the demo as well. So now let's talk about the demo. So for folks that have attended the plenary, I did a very simple demo during there in vanilla JavaScript without any framework. And the gist is we brought in 2 charts from Map Viewer, and we also configured a brand new chart with charts model. The goal for the demo today is see how we can turn this application from the ground up into a React application. So let's get started. Within our code editor, there's a couple packages that I have already installed from NPM. And here, since this is a React application, like I mentioned before, we offer a React-friendly package. And all you need to do is, whether you're using NPM or Yarn, you can just install this package. So here I have installed a couple packages: Calcite, map components, and charts components and charts model. So this application, all the UI is done by Calcite, and we're loading a map in the background, and we're also going to load in some charts. And the reason why we bring charts model is because we want to configure a chart directly brand new in your editor. Now let's look at the index.tsx. This is where all the stuff is being rendered. There's a couple of steps that you need to do prior to using charts components just to make sure everything is working. So the lines I've highlighted, line 16 and line 19, it imports the define custom element function from the charts components package. And this will register all the custom elements that we offer in the browser. And this will also load in all the necessary assets from CDN. So as you can see here, we have resource URL, and this loads in all the all the translation files that's needed for charts components. And for some context, this is a very basic React application, but as you can see here, I have included some Calcite tags for the UI setup, and I have also included a map component. So this is from the ArcGIS map component-react package, ArcGIS map. All it does is it renders a map on the custom application. And for here, I have added an event listener to grab the map element so we can actually utilize this inside our charts. So if you scroll down here, this is the section where we have included a custom charts React element with the map element prop being passed. So all the configuration is going to be done in a separate file, so we don't actually make this index file super long. So let's switch over to the charts.tsx. So this is where all the charts are being brought in, everything's being configured, and I'll kind of go through it line by line, so you can get started from here as well. The first step is in our return renderer, we're going to return the ArcGIS Charts box plot and ArcGIS scatter plot. So on line 66, 70, and 74. As you can see here, we have 3 instances of charts components, 2 box plot and 1 scatter plot. With React, we use the ref to set the reference on the component so we can do some work, and we can bring in the box plot and the scatter plot that way. Now, if we look at the logic on how to get started here, just like I said, we will use the React's useRef hook to set the reference on the box plots and the scatter plot, and this will help us to load in the charts. Now, here I have created an initialize charts function that will basically initialize the charts. And there's a couple of things I do want to call out. So we did grab the map element from the map component earlier, and this will allow us to get the map and also all the layers that is already contained in this web map. So on line 24, we use this map element And we use the .find layer by ID to grab the specific feature layer that those two box plots was stored on. So in this case, it was the water depth percentage change layer. So we're going to be using this layer throughout the first section for when the box plot is configured. So all the charts configuration, when done in MapViewer, is stored directly on the layer object. So you can simply do .charts and set the correct index numbers. Previously, in the simple vanilla app, there's only one chart, but since there's two, we're just going to set the index to 0 and set the index to 1. So we have two configurations. The very next thing you need to do is set the config and the layer to the relative config and the layer. And with React useRef, you need to add this extra .current to actually get the configuration and the layer on the element. This is not necessary. This .current is not necessary on any vanilla application. So with that, as you can see, let me just do a reload, make sure everything's good. Yeah, the same two box plot that I showed during plenary session is now here in a React application. So let's see how we can do the scatter plot, or how we can configure the scatter plot directly in your code editor next. So the scatter plot will be actually configured on a different layer. So the layer we used before was the water depth change layer, but now we want the aquifer saturated thickness layer. Same as before, we use the find layer by ID, and we can query and select the correct layer that we want to use. When creating a new chart with charts model, there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind. We need to pass a necessary parameter to the charts model for it to generate the charts configuration. And this can vary between chart types. So for example, for a box plot, you might only need one field, or for a scatter plot, you definitely need an X and a Y field. So all these are documented on the external documentation that I showed you earlier as well. And I'll revisit that with you in just a second. So here, we have passed our scatter plot parameter, defined it. So we passed the layer, set the x-axis and y-axis field. So we want to see the change in between 1974 versus 2014 in this case. The next thing is passing, we can generate the scatter plot model by passing the scatter plot parameters that we just defined. Now with the model, you can grab the configuration directly from it. And just like before, the last thing we need to do is grab the configuration and the layer by setting it to the configuration and the correct layer. Now you have a new chart that you just created within less than 15 lines of code. And some sections I didn't show here was you can do different configurations. You can update the title, set some linear trend lines. You can update, how the font size, all those configurations that you're used to doing in MapViewer, you can do it directly here in your code editor. So that is basically a very simple React application. And we basically did it in less than maybe 30, 25 lines of code combined. But the very next thing that I want to talk about is some charting capabilities. So we offer interaction features such as selection, filter by selection, filter by extent, zoom and reset zoom, and things like that. And you can also set the chart's color to have a color matching to your feature layer. Simple render, unique value render, pie chart render, class break render are all supported for different chart types and the combinations. So charts components actually come with one more component called charts action bar. So a lot of these interaction features can actually be used just by simply including the charts action bar component. This is a separate component part of the package. It will provide some pre-configured interactive features based on the chart type. And you can simply add it inside your chart component and set the slot to action bar like Ganesh mentioned earlier. You can also add some custom actions to suit your needs for your own custom application on the top or the bottom of the action bar. So now I'll go into the part 2 of my demo to talk about some capabilities. I'll switch my branch and get started. So if we call our attention to line 143, this is how we get started with the action bar. Action bar is just a separate component, just like a box plot component or a scatter plot or a bar chart component. Yeah, so it's all you need to do is just add it inside your box plot. And one thing you do need to remember is we need to set the slot to action bar. And just like before, we need to set a reference to use the React use ref hook to the action bar. Now within the logic, there's a couple things that we need to do to sync up the selection. The goal is when you select a feature on the chart, we want all the feature that it represents to show up on the map as well. This is the same demo I did during plenary, but we're going to take it one step further by sync up the selection between charts as well. So as you can see, we currently have 3 charts. So the goal is to, when we select some feature on the first chart, the map element gets selected, but also the same features gets represented on the second chart and the third chart, they will get selected as well. So we want to sync up everything basically. Let's see how we can do that. On line 19, like I said, we just have use ref from React as a hook to get the action bars reference. Line 22, 25, and 26, these are some steps that we need to make sure we sync up the selection and highlight data. So we need to set and obtain the layer view from the map component, and this will be done within the initialized charts. And for selection data and highlight select, these are some, I have added typing to them. This is a typing from the ArcGIS Esri core. So this is what we need to get started with the selection. Inside the initialized charts part, before we only grab the map element from the map object from the map element. Now we need the view as well. So with the view, we can obtain the layer view by calling .when layer view. And this will get the layer view for that specific layer. In this case, we want the layer view for the water depth percentage change. So when we highlight the features on the chart, the features will get highlighted from this layer and not the aquifer one because we passed it into our layer view. And we use React's useState to set the layer view for layer. This is where all the logic happens for the handle ArcGIS chart selection. So if you look on the element for the box plot, we actually added an event listener for when the selection is complete. And all we're doing here was defining a custom function to handle everything selection related. So let's go back to the function and kind of walk through it step by step. So when there's no selection, we want to make sure that, hey, everything is in sync. So we want to grab the selection data from the event detail. Basically, when a selection is made on the chart, we can, because it is included in the event listener, we can grab the selection data. Now we need to create a variable to check if the selection OIDs are empty. So selection OID is just a property on the selection data. And with the highlight select we used earlier, this step will remove any previous selection that's on the map. So we won't want to select something and don't have it removed and everything just gets stacked up over time and everything gets selected in the end. On step 11 here, we have an if-else statement. This handles all the logic between syncing up, clearing the selection between charts and the map. So if the empty selection is true, then we need to make sure all the chart selection gets cleared. Basically, if there's selection on the first chart, we want to clear on the second chart, make sure the third one's clear so nothing is remaining. This part, we can actually customize the action bar to suit your needs. So here, I have added a disable clear selection on the action bar when there's no selection. So you shouldn't be able to clear anything if there's nothing to clear. And the same thing for filter by selection. You shouldn't be able to click on that button if there's nothing selected. So you can customize this however you need in your application by using different functions as well. In the else block, we highlight the selection when there is selection data. And on line 99 to 101, this is how we sync up the selection between the selection data. In this part right here, 104, 105, this basically says, hey, light up the buttons when there are selections so you know when to click and when not to click. So without that logic, now we can make a selection on the first map. As you can see, the selected features gets highlighted on the map, and also it gets synced up between charts as well. And we have this action bar on the left-hand side, and all these are calcite internally as well, as you're pretty familiar with the icons. So we can use the action bar or simply just click somewhere else on the chart, and then it would dismiss the selection. But the same thing you can do, you can rotate the chart. There's some default interactions that you can do with the action bar, but you can also add custom ones. You can filter by the selection. We can unfilter it. And now we can clear the selection. And there's also this switch selection, so nothing is selected. If we switch it, everything will get selected, and vice versa. The very last thing that I want to demo is saving charts. So I mentioned earlier in my slides, there's also the capability for you to configure something in your code editor and save it back to the web map. So currently, this is my web map that I'm using by passing the reference, by passing the web map ID. Within the save charts function, if the map element is not null, meaning that we can actually obtain the map element from the map component, we can grab the map. We'll grab the layer that we want this chart configuration to be saved on, and we can grab the configuration from the charts reference. So since we did the configuration with charts model already, this is already saved onto the element. Now we just need to clear, make sure there's no other prior charts saved on there, and then we just do a charts.push, adding our scatter plot configuration, the new one, into the charts array. And then the last thing, we just save the map. So if you look down here, I have added a calcite button that has an onClick to call this function. So if you go back, as you can see, we have a button here that says Save Charts. I can click on this. And this is the part where you need to log in to make a modification on your web map. So I'll click OK. And now, if we go back to the web map that we're using, and let's wait for it to refresh. And then this is map viewer, and then on the right-hand side, I'll go into configure charts. And the chart you just configured between year 1984 and 2024 is now present in map viewer. And we can switch between back and forth and see they're the exact identical chart. So this is very powerful because you can do one thing in map viewer and then bring it into your charts component in your custom application, or you can do something on your custom application and bring it back into your item in the portal as well, or ArcGIS Online. So the next thing, Ganesh is going to talk about charts performance.
Thanks, Jimmy. That was a great app showcasing all our charting capabilities that you can get started with right now. And we wanted to share some highlights done in performance. Like I mentioned earlier, we have worked on different query optimization techniques that are already done on feature layers to improve chart performance. Some of them are highlighted here. So cache-int, you may have used cache-int. Cache-int is enabled by default to leverage server-side caching if you're doing query with same parameters again. And we use protocol binary format is also enabled by default, which has a better payload size over JSON payload when making queries. Also, we have implemented query optimization specific to each chart type needs. For example, in a bar chart, let's say you're going to fetch 18 bars, we make one query rather than making 18 queries to get those data. And we also worked with feature service team to enhance the REST feature service API. For example, in query analytics, we added the new linear regression function, which allows us to compute the R square to know, like, when you're doing scatter plot, to know like how closely they are related, the two variables. And we also observe like scatter plot performance can take a hit when it has large number of features to draw on the map. So for example, right now we are like when it crosses 10K features, we do some kind of an aggregation. The basic concept here is we divide the X and Y axis as grids. And in this example, it's an 8 by 8 grid. Let's say X1, Y1 grid, we query each grid to find like how many points it contains. Let's say X1, Y1 had 3 points. We just draw one virtual point taking an average of that. Right? So that way we can plot more scatter plot features in a scatter plot. We also leverage feature layer view as you saw in the demo, right, to do client-side querying. So when needed, when you use filter by selection, feature layer view is used to do client-side querying. So you're not going to the server to redraw the chart and things like that. Something with my. Yeah, switch it. Yeah. Yeah, we want to share a brief roadmap of upcoming features that you can expect in charts components. The first thing is we want to come out a charts components beta with all your feedback, which will improve to implement all the different things that we need to implement to get charts components out of beta. You can expect minor breaking changes, but it's fully functional, so you can start using right away today. We are going to improve our documentation on chart specification and also the charts model package that you saw earlier. And we're also enhancing a lot of the capabilities on existing chart types, like for example, box plots. We'll add like mean series, mean lines. Like I said, we are also working on improving performance on certain chart types. So for right now, we are using SVG-based rendering. We are working on transitioning from SVG to Canvas. And the results have been promising. For example, in scatter plot, on 50K points, it takes about 20 seconds. With Canvas, it takes about 4 seconds to render. So you can expect those coming out in future releases. There are a lot of new charts types also in consideration. For example, calendar heat chart, which enables you to see a calendar view like a heat map with time series data. We are working on calendar heat chart and also radar charts. And these are some of the resources that you can start using it today for getting started with charts components. In fact, the demo app that Jimmy had done earlier is also shared for you for reference. Yeah, with that, we are opening up for questions from you, and we like your feedback. Thank you. Yes.
Can the chart, does it have to be associated with the layer? If I have an array of data, can I use the chart to generate the graphs?
So can the chart be associated with the layer? Without the layer? Okay. So currently we recommend you have to use it with the layer. So your data has to you have to make it as a feature layer to start using it with charts components. But you have data which is not a layer at all? Okay. So we do have a way to do that. I think we can expose that capability also. We call that like an inline data mode. So where you can pass like an array of POJOs, like array of objects, and we can plot charts on it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I have a feature layer, and the data changes, so if I save the graph next time, do I get the latest chart data?
Yes, that's a good question. So the question is on like if you created a chart on a feature layer and then you reopen it again, yeah, if the feature layer data change, yeah, you're always querying on the latest data. So yeah, it will be up to date. Yeah, that's the question is, can we do charts on related data? So you wanted to do it both together as one chart, like you want the feature layers data. Okay. Yeah, currently we don't have that support. It works on just the feature layer, but that's something that we can look into, like also bringing the query related features to plot the chart. Yeah. Yes. So you have two, the question is you have two different layers and you want to create a single chart from those two layers. Yeah, currently we don't have like the data source is just on a single layer. I think the current solution that you can do is you can do a join, like with the feature layer views you can do a join and then use the join layer to use you can plot a chart on it. In fact, there are analysis to do tools as well to do a join layer, and then on the join layer you can plot a chart from it.
This is the second presentation that I've heard about cache int. Can you talk more about that and how do you enable it?
Cool. The question is about cache int. Can you go back to that slide? So cache int is a property on the feature layer. If you click that, can you click on that?
You'll need to go back to which slide?
Yeah, so it is a property on the query. Like if you go to the JavaScript API, the query module, so the query object has a property called cache int. So you can enable that to true, right? And we in fact enable it to true on all our queries that we do for charts. So what happens is the very first time the server sees that, let's say I'm sending a parameters A, B, C, and it's going to do the query on the server, right? And the second time if it sees the same parameters, it's not going to recompute again. It just gives you the response from the server cache. So it's going to be much faster. So we enable cache int by default on all chart related queries. Yeah. Great, yeah. So the question is there any export capability to get like a chart as a PNG or a PDF to do like print? Yeah, we are working on it. It's something that we could add. We are looking at like the action bar. We could have like a different export capabilities. So you can export as a PNG, export as a print. And we are also discussing like you want the chart with the map to be printed as well. Yeah, it's in our discussions, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, I think can you show the last slide? Yeah. Thank you so much.